This is going to be relatively lowbrow compared to what you've seen so far, so don't have huge expectations. This is me, Head of User Experience. This is things I like and things I loathe. That's basically pictures of beer. And these are the company that I work for. And so they're the two important ones at the end there. The company I work for is called SYZYGY. It means an alignment of things, basically. Strategy, creative, and media. This is a sort of a plug for the company I work for. And we put those together to create meaningful experiences, all of which are fed by data. We have offices in various places, lots of colleagues, 700 plus. We are also hiring at the moment, so find our website, come and join us. 1995, way back when we were called a new media agency, and 51% owned by WPP, but because we're mainly a German organisation and the Germans have got smart laws, they haven't quite got enough to own my soul yet. So, these are the people for whom transient artifacts are going to become a thing, apparently. They're the ones who pay the bills, so they've got a lot of persuasion to go on there. So today, we were supposed to be talking about the future of mobile. And to understand that, what we need to do is start with a bit of a retrospective. That's what I'm going to do today. How far have we come? What mistakes have we made? And what could we be doing better? So I'm going to show you how we did mobile in the past, the craft and the unbelievably bizarre practices that we had. And when you've seen what's gone before, then perhaps you'll be able to think about where we are today, and you will be asking this question here: is mobile still a thing? So let's go back in time to when I was born.
BBC One.
The pub of the future, Mark I at Hackney Wick. In this pub, the question, what will you have,
Tonic, please.
I think I just stick with light ale.
A nice scotch and soda.
leads to the unexpected. Press the button for a line. According to the directory, dial 145 for a gin and tonic, 169 for a double whiskey, 187 for a Bloody Mary. And if you want something unusual, like 2 cherries and a cube of ice, dial 100 for the waiter if you want him in person.
So what you're seeing there is basically the Wetherspoons app, but in prototype form. I want to know what user stories they were working to when they did that one. The report on Tomorrow's World in 1965 went on to suggest that this could be rolled out in more than just pubs, and that before too long we would be ordering products from all sorts of businesses over our phones. So they got that bit right, but what this also shows you is that it's really difficult to predict the future, and if you get it wrong, the future could be really, really crap. So what I'm now going to show you. Oh, by the way, did anybody spot the logo in the middle of the handset? This looks like prototype Motorola Razr, perhaps. This is my first mobile phone. All right, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But the Tomorrow's World piece was about the possibilities of technology changing our behaviours, changing how we do things, technology driving behaviour. And that's the way it's been for a very long time. So this phone, back in 1998, I'd wanted a phone for a very long time, but it's not because I needed one, but because I just wanted a piece of tech in my pocket. In fact, it didn't go in your pocket, it went on one of those little pouches that went on the outside. Very cool. And in 1998, I landed a presenter's job on a radio station, which sounds really glamorous until you know that it was Radio Buxton. I lived over here in Newark, and the radio station was there. That's 60 miles, 2 hours through wiggly lanes through Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. And for me, that route was an excuse to get a mobile phone, because I told my family that I could stay in contact, and if I broke down, I could call the AA. And this was an era, don't forget, when people would say, oh, you've got a mobile phone. Who do you call? That's what it was all about back then. Today, we don't even think about having a mobile phone because we all just have them. It's the norm. I was 33 years old when I got this, and the average age for your first phone now is 10 years old. And kids are using them before they're even 10 years old. They're using them they're using them in the womb. We are onboarding kids on the womb using apps for pregnant ladies. So they're listening to things. And it's not unusual for kids to get their first phone about the same time as they get their first piercing. So anyway, back in 1998, I was on the one-to-one network, driving through Derbyshire where there was no signal whatsoever. So it was completely useless, my new piece of tech. And the phone ended up in the drawer and I got sacked from the radio station, but that's another story. So let's move on to 8 years later. I was working for a mobile marketing agency called N-Pocket. I was an art director there. We had a mobile ad platform and we had a mobile messaging platform. And our largest client was Vodafone. And for Vodafone, what we did, we were designing and delivering brand, product and service messages using MMS, multimedia messaging some things. So basically it's picture messaging, and this was the technology back then. We sent hundreds and thousands of these in the aim that we would get people to buy into new services, upgrade their phone, or just buy more minutes, just persuade them to do that. And if you look at the language that we use, and you look at what we're saying on these things, hopefully you can read it from the back, you'll see that it's quite simplistic. We're actually teaching people how to use their phones back then. We're actually saying what is out there on the other side. And it seems quite patronising to be doing this, but you think about what was happening back then in 1998 and how far the consumer has come since then, how much more savvy they are today, what their expectations are today. And on a different plane, I mean, we all strive to create relevant and personal experiences. So you would expect that all the subscriber data that Vodafone had back in the day, that they would be able to do amazing things with targeting and getting the right message to the right people. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case, because there were too many hurdles. So for instance, the folks in marketing, they didn't talk to the people who had the CRM and the relationship with the customers, who didn't talk to the people who handled the data, who didn't talk to the people who sorted the messaging out. So basically, it was really disjointed. Now, you think that today, companies have gone a lot further and they'd suss that out, but it's only today that companies are beginning to realise that you've got to join up all these data silos if you want to provide good experiences. And back then, we'd also say to our clients that it is a privilege to be a brand that is inside somebody's pocket. So on the phone, in the pocket. And to earn that privilege, you have to be relevant and timely. Today, Uber's children, as we call our customers, want so much more. They want more than just timely, relevant information. But anyway, we'll get on to them later on. Let's think about what else was going on in that era. In the noughties, the telcos had what they called walled gardens. Inside you could browse curated content. It was curated and it was free. Outside, you had to pay for every byte of data that you consumed. And when you were outside, you faced sort of the publishers' paywalls. So, and there were contracts that wouldn't even let you outside. So it was really, really restrictive. And there was a long battle for who owned the mobile internet. Consumers basically were getting a bum deal. And it seemed like ages before publishers and the carriers actually got to grips with the fact that consumers needed something better. Walls are not what the internet is about, unless you follow Donald Trump. But today, this is still a thing. The telco walled gardens have been superseded by the likes of Facebook and Weibo. And we're beginning to see public awareness again leading to disquiet. And this dissatisfaction this time is about freedom, it's about truth, it's about information bubbles, and it's about corporations controlling what we see. It's also about the money they're making as well. So that is something to think about the future. And during this decade, something which I, along with many of my colleagues, was advocating, but I now get really frustrated with, was something which we refer to as snackable content. With 2G connections and ridiculous data charges And the belief that mobile internet consumption was only ever taking place on a bus, the snackable content knew its place. So snackable content came about because we had the mobile internet, which was separate from the desktop internet, two lots of platforms serving different things. Now that it's all combined, we're getting what I consider to be the lowest common denominator. So everything is really small. And the mobile internet has got an awful lot to answer for. How often do you reach the end of a story and go, is that it? We're actually demanding more now. And the BBC is beginning, along with others, to bring back longer format. Although things like this, it's like almost like a warning sign that this isn't snackable content. So Npocket, the agency that I was working for, got sold to Nokia, who wanted our ad platform. And the handset manufacturers were another group of organisations that were looking to control the internet. They wanted to keep you locked into their ecosystem. There were lots of ad networks available, so it wasn't just the likes of your Facebooks and your Googles. Everybody had their own ad network back at the time. This creative is a single frame, and it measures 96 pixels by 16 pixels, and this is a banner ad from the mobile age, and it's a single frame GIF. You try and sell me a product on that today, right? But that's what we had to work with back then. But we had to work with various handsets. So what we would do, we would be working with the specifications of the different ad networks, and they would all vary. Some ad networks wouldn't allow any animation. Some would only allow a maximum of 2 frames, and some had limits. Well, you can see the limits there. Sort of 3K was what we were dealing with back then. And I was asked to design the very first set of mobile banner ads for American Express. And this is them. So you can tell I'm a hoarder. Everything is on hard drives, and I can drag these out at any moment. And the message would change based on the handset. So based on the size of the screen, whether it was 2G or 3G, and it was also based on the ad network. It was never based on who the customer was, where they were, and especially where they were in a purchase journey. So it was always like one size fits all, practically, when it came to consumer needs. And also, when I presented these to Amex, they said, but we need the regulatory copy on all our advertising. So you know all that small print that goes at the bottom of press ads? They wanted that on here. So I said, you're having a laugh, aren't you? So what we had to do, and it wasn't just with American Express, it was with all the brands. We were having to cajole them into seeing that this was new territory and that they would have to break the rules to create new rules, and they would have to work with the regulators. And we also had to persuade them that everything didn't cascade down from a TV ad or an out-of-home advertising. But it still does today. It's still one of the problems that we have. But what we did what did get out of doing this was getting really good at writing micro copy. In 2010, Marks and Spencer's launched their first mobile e-commerce site, and that was one that I designed. I moved on to another mobile agency to do that one. But for this, I had to work within the constraints of something that was called web scraping. So there was a company called USableNet, who I think are still around, but at the time what they did was use technology to take the code of a desktop site and repurpose it for a mobile site using styling rules that you would give them. And the designs that I created would have to include things that only appeared on the desktop site. Couldn't put anything in that was mobile only. If it wasn't on the desktop site, couldn't include it. We could strip things out, but we couldn't put anything new in there. And also, we designed these things so that the screens were cropped from the right. So what you see here is creative. I mean, you can see she's missing half her face. That was the way we used to have to work. There was no resizing done for these particular screens. It was archaic. But this won multiple awards. It was deemed like the template for future high street brands' mobile commerce sites. However, Marks and Spencer's did actually realise that doing things this way, constrained by the technology, they were providing a really bad experience. And they believed that the future for m-commerce was in a mobile app. Here we go. The BRAPs, branded apps. And once the iPhone was launched, there was a sort of gold rush to get a presence in the pocket of every consumer who had an iPhone. And it's well documented. Most were crap, but it took a hell of a long time before we could persuade the brands and the designers to admit it. So there was a Tumblr site, still exists now, that sort of reviewed these BRAPs, and that's one of them. So while this was going on, those of us who lived and breathed mobile were getting very excited by NFC, by QR codes, by geolocation, and what we were doing, we were dreaming up all sorts of scenarios where we could use this technology. But the problem was the handset manufacturers weren't quite caught up with our thinking. We just needed them to realise the tech. But I was lucky enough to work with Barclays, who were very excited by NFC. And they didn't bother to wait for the handset manufacturers to catch up and embed the technology. What they did, they created stickers that they could stick on the phones because they realised that our phones are more important to us than our wallets. So they thought, okay, stick the sticker on the phone and away you go. You can make payments that way. So this was early NFC payments with a sticker. And so it was really refreshing to see a brand who was dealing with consumer needs before they were dealing with technology. And this is another mobile agency that I work for. This one was called Sponge. And here I gathered everybody together and I presented this. Responsive web design, friend or foe. This was in 2011. And I'd been around a bit now and I knew that change happened really quickly. There was this new thing called responsive design. We were building websites for the like of Adidas, Evans Cycles, Investec, and I actually thought our days were numbered. So I jumped ship after just 6 months at this agency, and I went to work for one of the best known ad agencies in the world, JWT, J. Walter Thompson. Well, actually, it was JWT Mobile. Didn't quite make the jump out of mobile at that stage. We were setting up a new mobile business within the agency, and this was an agency that basically didn't even get digital, let alone what we were trying to do. Everything that we had was based on hand-me-downs from television, hand-me-downs from out of home, and there was only one time when I got in on the act early and I was able to actually influence the assets that I could use for some mobile creative. And so what this was an idea for showing how much effort was required to train guide dogs for the blind by allowing mobile users to have the chance to give commands to puppies who invariably didn't obey. It sounds like a crap branded app, doesn't it? And it was. Also, think about this, the production for this, stick a few puppies in a hot TV studio, the hot lights beaming down on them, and all they want to do is go to sleep. So we ended up with really rubbish footage. And then, to top it all, we discovered that the media plan to drive people to this app where they could do this experience, it wasn't an app, it was a web app actually, was to run press ads that were activated by Blipper. We were on a hiding to nothing. And nobody works for Blipper here, do they? Does it still exist? But anyway, I think we actually lost somebody at Andrex their job over this one. So after 2 years, JWT Mobile actually got shut down. There's no surprises there. The reason being nobody had an appetite for a future that had QR codes made out of Roundtree's fruit pastels. This actually works if anybody wants to try it. If anybody just like hold the camera phone up there, first person to get to the resulting thing gets a packet of Roundtree's fruit pastels. In fact, 2 prizes. Anybody manage it? I shall move on. Just shout bingo when you've actually got there. So I got out of mobile eventually, and yep, bingo. Right? Can you catch? Who shouted bingo? But you work here. Good catch. I don't mind. I recognised I had to get out because I was being typecast as the mobile designer. But more importantly, what I also recognised was the fact that marketeers were shifting their focus from technology, so shifting their focus from form factors and delivery methods over to customer centricity. That was the new big thing. And until relatively recently, technology has been driving mobile. And we designed capabilities, we designed for capabilities, we've been designing for features, and we've been creating reasons for their use, and then we've been going on and we've been persuading consumers to actually go and use them. We've been telling them what the benefits of these new things are. But actually today it's changed. So what we're doing now is we're designing for recognised consumer needs. And in agency land, our new contacts are the CXOs, the Customer Experience Officers. This is who we're dealing with now at advertising agencies. They've got the responsibility for experiences across all the owned and non-owned channels for their consumers, whether it's a website, it's an app, it's a YouTube channel, or whether it's a tone of voice on an Instagram post. They're responsible for how users interact with their brand across multiple touch points. And with them comes a desire to break down silos, whether that's data silos, whether it's product silos, or design silos. They want like the classic single joined up experience for their consumers. They don't want great experiences on mobile, tablet and desktop. What they do want is a great experience that works for the consumer. There's a subtle difference there. It's not how you deliver, it's what, where, when and to whom. And that's your responsibility as designers. Now, as I said at the start, I'm not going to show you the future because I don't really think it's possible. Instead, what I've shown you is the rapid change in technology, the creative methodology and where that's changed as well, and consumer behaviours as well. And this will only continue. In fact, I think the changes are going to get faster and faster, and we're possibly going to struggle to keep up. So what I'm going to do now is just wrap up with 4 things that are on my wish list. Number 1, stop with the mobile first. Now, this might be a bit contentious. What I'm not saying is deprioritise the mobile experience. Excuse me while I just have a light ale. What I do mean is don't let the old mobile first rules dictate everything that you do. I've already said that content delivery is now from a single CMS in our responsive world, and it's actually the legacy of the old 3G mobile consumer who's doing 6 stops on the bus. That's got to stop. Give me long form, give me something rich, give me something that's suitable for my commute, which is actually 80 miles each way on a Wi-Fi enabled train. Now you can interpret this any way you want, but 5G is coming and people will expect a lot more. Number 2, don't be constrained by technology or led astray by technology. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying that we know that all design should be led by or driven by needs, because we wouldn't be here otherwise tonight, would we? So if you've got an idea, but it can't be realised or can't get mass adoption because you haven't quite got the technology yet, then fudge it. Think back to that NFC sticker on the back of the phone. Barclaycard fudged it, and now it's commonplace. They proved the point there. So it's sort of fudging and prototyping. But as we enter the 5G, everything connected to everything else age, stitching stuff together will become the norm, and it's likely to be an absolute nerd's paradise. Just because you can take an API from Transport for London and plug it into your app, or plug it into your fridge, or plug it into your popcorn maker, or plug it into your sex toy, and I wish I'd designed a slide for that one, it doesn't mean that it's responsible to do so. And in a similar vein, we now have folding phones. Don't feel that you've got to rush out there and design something for the folding phone, because basically you'll confuse the hell out of the client who still thinks it's necessary to design for above the fold. The third one, design for sustainability. Now Instagram, my Instagram feed, it seems to know that I'm a keen photographer. and it's constantly bombarding me with products for new gadgets that go on top of tripods. But every one of these gadgets seems to be controlled by a smartphone. So there are two things that are joined together. So this wish actually goes well beyond mobile because, again, entering the 5G age, there seems to be a theme here, so much stuff is going to be dependent on so much other stuff. We'll see many more things that plug into our phones, bottom of the phones, that we tap our phones, that will talk to our phones. Here we have things that really bug me. I'm now having to throw away kit that was once usable until the company that made it updated software and chose not to support my legacy bits of kit. This is Sonos. These 4 Sonos controllers work perfectly. They were scattered around my house. Anybody could pick them up and play tunes. And then what Sonos did, they decided that they were going to upgrade their software, mainly just so that they could have it on mobile phones only. And these things became legacy. They were no longer supported. They didn't connect to the speakers anymore. And so they were trash. And that meant that because it's now only on a mobile phone, only I can switch the music on. Anybody that comes to my house and just says, can we have some music? It's me that has to get my phone out of my pocket and play the playlist. So that is a poor experience as far as I'm concerned. And if you go on to Sonos user forums, you will see lots of conversations about this because people are beginning to get worried. People are beginning to think that their legacy speakers at some stage are going to be useless and not connected to the rest of the system. And they're worrying what's going to happen to them. And I'm calling this compatibility drift. There's probably a proper name for it, but I like to put a little sort of trademark at the end of things, and that's my phrase, compatibility drift. And this is happening at a time when users want to know that the things that they're buying hasn't got built-in obsolescence. So again, you as designers, you've got responsibility here for making sure, according to my wish list, that things will go on and on and on, up to a point, admittedly. And by the way, these 4 things, Sonos gave me £400 for them, which they said I could put them against 2 other speakers. Those 2 speakers, Sonos ones, both controlled by Alexa. So I've got yet another service and compatibility thing that I have to start worrying about. And finally, a little bit personal, this one, self-centered, but as the digital natives, like the rest of us, are getting older, they're growing up, we have to consider that change of age. Mobiles are not just for the youth. The internet isn't just for the youth. Older users are the generation who invented the internet, and just because I might be looking at my phone and doing this so that I can see the phone doesn't mean I don't want the latest in UI, doesn't mean I don't want the latest in cool experiences, but it does mean that I want you to think about the fact that I do that. So deliver me, as I get older, experiences that allow me to have my failing eyesight and possibly at some stage allow me to use arthritic fingers, because those people who are so used to using digital will be suffering from those sorts of things at a later stage. That's about it. I just want to say that I've been talking through what has basically been my CV way back when, 8 years solid mobile roles. And the thing is, none of these companies exist anymore. They've all gone. Mobile as we knew it is less and less of a thing. And in a while, when everything is 5G and we don't think about broadband coming through the landline, we don't even think about fixed line telephones, we possibly won't have a reason to think about mobile at all. But I'd like to think that you can take the learnings that we had from the mobile age and apply them across any experience, wherever that may be. So thank you very much. Good night.